Before any star lit up the sky, before time even began to move, and long before Earth existed, there was only an endless silence. Before anything existed, there was no light, no sound, and no movement, yet something or someone was already present. This initial presence, which came before everything else, marks the starting point of every mystery. When it was discovered that angels were praising God before the world was established, a new question emerged. When were these heavenly beings brought into existence? And even more curiously, who created the creator of everything? Before we continue, take a moment to focus. What you are about to learn might completely change the way you think about God, time, and existence itself. If you enjoy discussing important spiritual topics, secrets hidden within the scriptures, and questions that few dare to ask, then subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, and like this video right now. Today, we are going beyond what is immediately visible to reach into the everlasting. The Bible offers us clues about this mystery. In the book of Job 38:7 it says, "While the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy." This verse shows that angels were present and rejoicing at the moment when earth was created. Yet if they were there when everything began, that means they existed before earth. In contrast, the Genesis account, which carefully describes the creation of the physical world, never discusses the creation of the angels. This omission raises an important question. Were the angels brought into existence at a secret moment outside of our time, or did they already exist in a higher state? For centuries, theologians and scholars have debated when angels came into being. Some believe that they appeared before the physical world was created, when God established the heavens and the spiritual domain. Colossians 1:16 explains that by him, all things were created in heaven and on earth, both what is seen and unseen. This includes angels and the entire celestial hierarchy. In other words, before there was form and matter, there was already a spiritual order. Still, angels are not eternal like God. They have a beginning. They are creatures created to serve and worship the Creator. They live in a dimension where time does not flow in the same way as it does for us. Yet this place still had a starting point. The idea that God created angels is accepted by nearly all Christian traditions, yet it raises an even bigger question: who created God? This question challenges the limits of our human minds, which are used to thinking in terms of beginnings and endings, cause and effect. However, the scriptures offer something unexpected. Before mountains were raised or earth was formed and the world existed from everlasting to everlasting, it states, "You are God," Psalm 92. This means that God was not created, never had a beginning, and will never have an end. He exists on his own, eternal and absolute, the only being that simply is. But how can we accept that something can simply exist without any origin? Perhaps that very fact shows that to understand the Creator, we need more than just reason. It is hard to imagine something coming into existence without a starting point, since our minds are formed within time, where everything is born, grows, and ends. We are taught to search for causes behind every effect, so when something exists, we assume someone made it. With God, however, that reasoning does not work. He is the only being who was not caused, because he is the very cause of all things. He did not just create time, he stands apart from it. While everything we know relies on a starting point, God exists in an eternal state where past, present, and future do not apply. This idea is not only challenging, it is nearly impossible for the human mind to fully understand. Yet, if God is eternal and self-existent, why did he choose to create anything at all? What would make a being who is complete and self-sufficient decide to form creatures like the angels, powerful, intelligent beings who are in some ways inferior to him? Some theologians believe that the creation of angels was an act of love and a way for God to show his power, justice, and beauty to those who could witness and worship him. In this view, angels are not merely servants, they are everlasting witnesses to God's greatness. They exist to praise Him, obey His commands, and contribute to the order of the spiritual world. Yet, the existence of angels also presents us with another question. If God created these beings with free will, why does He allow some of them to rebel? The Bible recounts the story of Lucifer's fall and the uprising of angels who chose to oppose God. If God knew this would occur, why did He not stop it? The answer, once again, is linked to the concept of freedom. True love requires the ability to choose. God could have created beings like machines that always obeyed, but He chose instead to create beings capable of making their own decisions, even if that meant some would choose darkness. This demonstrates that even the highest angels, as exalted as they are limited creatures who can make mistakes and suffer the consequences of their choices. Even after some fell into rebellion, most angels have remained loyal to their original purpose. The Bible describes multitudes of angels surrounding God's throne, declaring day and night, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts." These magnificent beings were created to serve different roles: messengers, warriors, protectors, and intercessors. There are various hierarchies among the angels, such as archangels, cherubim, and seraphim, each with specific responsibilities in God's plan. They do not just watch over humanity, they interact with us. Throughout the history of salvation, angels appear at crucial moments. One angel announced Jesus' birth to Mary, another appeared to Joseph in dreams. Angels guided the people of Israel, protected prophets, and even opened prison doors. Although these acts are impressive, they show only a small part of what angels are and do. Much of their work takes place out of our sight, in a place that is not part of our everyday experience. There, they battle against evil forces, protect those chosen by God, and carry out His will with unwavering accuracy. They are servants of the Most High, and at the same time they observe God's plan for salvation with awe and respect. However, it is important to note that while angels are magnificent, they should not be worshipped. In Revelation 22, the Apostle John falls at an angel's feet and is immediately told, "Do not do that. I am your fellow servant. Worship God." This passage makes it clear. Angels are servants, not divine beings. They were created, they have a beginning, and their power comes directly from the Creator. Every time a creature attempts to take the place of its maker, it fails. And this is exactly what happened with Lucifer. He did not just want to mirror God's glory, he wanted to receive it for himself. He desired to rise above the Creator, and as a result, he was cast out like a flash of lightning. Lucifer's rebellion not only shook the heavens, but also exposed the tension between freedom and submission. Lucifer, once an anointed cherub admired for his beauty, wisdom, and adornment with precious stones, filled with pride, wanted to be like the Most High. This insurrection caused a major break in the order, and many angels sided with him, eventually becoming what we call demons. They were expelled from God's presence, yet they continue to deceive, accuse, and destroy. The existence of these fallen beings shows that even in the spiritual area there is conflict, a reminder that free will, while a great gift, can lead to endless glory or complete ruin. Despite some falling away, God's plan was not stopped. The faithful angels stayed by His side, carrying out His will in every area. They fight against darkness, proclaim promises, and protect those who fear the Lord. They do not know everything, yet they carefully observe every step of humanity. According to 1 Peter, even the angels long to understand the plan of salvation, showing us that they not only serve, but also learn from the history of humanity. They see how grace, forgiveness, and God's love are shown, and that leaves them fascinated, even though they have never experienced what we call redemption. As we consider the creation of angels, we come to understand that the spiritual world is much more structured and organized than we might imagine. It is not a case of random beings floating about, but rather an organized force with defined hierarchies and roles. The Bible talks about thrones, dominions, principalities, and powers, all terms that outline a clear chain of command in the heavenly area. For instance, the seraphim in Isaiah are described as those who cover their faces in the presence of God's glory, while continuously saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts." Cherubim appear guarding the path to the tree of life after mankind was expelled from Eden. These clear distinctions show that the creation of angels was done with care and intention, reflecting the order and holiness of the Creator. But if angels were created by God, how do we understand a creator who was never created? This question, debated by philosophers and theologians for centuries, always brings us back to the same point. God is eternal. There was never a moment when he began to exist. He is the source of all things, yet had no beginning of his own. Revelation 1:8 reinforces this idea when the Lord declares, "I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end," meaning that God is the author of time and stands above it all. Eternity for God is not just endless time, but an existence that is separate from time. For him, yesterday, today, and tomorrow exist fully and completely at once. Our challenge in accepting a being without an origin comes from our understanding that everything has a cause. Our reasoning is based on the idea of beginnings, processes, and endings, but God is not limited by that way of thinking. He is not part of the created universe. He is the Creator who is the starting point of every reality, both visible and invisible. If something existed before him, that would be the true God, but there is nothing else. He is one of a kind, absolute, and self-declaring, as he told Moses on Mount Horeb, "I am, not I was or I will be." He stands as a declaration of constant, infinite, and self-sufficient existence. This is the God who made the angels, and he is also the God who sustains everything, including you. When we recognize God's everlasting nature and his complete authority, we begin to understand the roles of angels and our own place in creation more clearly. No matter how powerful or glorious they are, angels remain servants. They are created to worship, obey, and act according to the Creator's will. They do not possess the divine essence. Only God holds those qualities, such as being everywhere at once, all-knowing and all-powerful. That is why every act of worship should be given solely to him. Angels point us back to God, not to themselves. They exist so that everyone may acknowledge the greatness of the Most High in every situation. Just as angels were created to honor the eternal, we too were made to praise the one who is always constant, unchanging, and infinitely holy. Even among the angels, there are levels of understanding. Some are positioned closer to the throne, like the seraphim who continuously worship him, while others are sent to earth with specific missions. For example, Gabriel announced the birth of Jesus, and Michael is known as the warrior archangel mentioned in Daniel and Revelation, leading battles against evil. Each angel has a defined role in God's everlasting plan, yet none of them fully comprehend all of the Creator's designs. They follow orders, but do not control timing or execute final judgments. They are ministers of the Most High, and they do not share in his divine nature. Only one is truly eternal. Truly, before God, even angels show respect through their actions. When we study how angels came into being, we are drawn to the very heart of what exists, God himself. The more we look to him, the more we understand that we are not facing an ordinary being, but a supreme reality that is far beyond our human understanding. God not only created the heavens and the angels, but also upholds everything with his word, as mentioned in Hebrews 1:3. This includes both the spiritual and the material. Nothing stands on its own without his permission. Not even the angels, despite their impressive appearance, possess life independently. Everything depends on him, and everything returns to him. Therefore, the question of who created God cannot be answered by human reasoning. It's like trying to fit the ocean into a cup. God was not created. He simply exists by himself, independent of time, space, matter, or consciousness. All creation, including angels, humans, and worlds, comes from his sovereign will. Trying to explain God using the logic of creation is a common mistake. It is like trying to understand an author just by examining the characters. God is not part of the story, but rather the author who wrote it. He is above the plot and beyond the pages, the beginning and the end. No matter how challenging it is for our minds to understand, our spirit can sense that God is eternal and that angels were created. This allows us to see the clear difference between the Creator and his creatures, a fundamental distinction that helps prevent doctrinal and spiritual mistakes. Throughout history, some people became so fascinated with the angels that they began to honor them excessively, even falling into idolatry. Others tried to call on angels, control their actions, or seek protection from them outside of God's plan. However, the faithful angels never sought to be objects of worship. They always pointed to the Lord. They did not seek glory for themselves, but simply obeyed, served, and bowed before the one who has no beginning and no end. There is a quiet wisdom in the angels who stand before God. They do not question their origin or demand explanations. They know that the Creator is worthy of absolute trust and that understanding every detail is not required to obey him. Unlike many who demand proof, arguments, and guarantees, the faithful angels show reverence before the greatness of the eternal. They feel his strength, live in his presence, and accept that God's existence is not just a theory, but a pure reality. Maybe that is the key. The closer you are to God, the less you need to know, and the stronger your desire becomes to worship him. Even among the angels, there was pride, and this teaches us an important lesson. The presence of God does not remove the chance to choose. Lucifer did not fall because he was unaware. He fell because of arrogance. He experienced God's glory and power, yet he still longed for a position equal to the Creator. His fall was the result of a heart that could not accept being a created being and that wanted to be on the same level as God. This is the same pattern we see when any created being tries to claim the place of the eternal. The outcome is always destruction. That is what happened with Lucifer, with humankind in a similar way, and will continue to occur to anyone who challenges the authority of the Most High. The question, who created God, might also hide a subtle trap. It could suggest trying to reduce the eternal to something that fits inside our limited human logic. But God is not a riddle to be solved. He is a mystery meant to be honored in worship. His eternal nature is not a complex equation, but a clear, spiritual truth. He does not demand that we understand every aspect of him completely, only that we know him by faith, a faith that is not blind, but based on evidence, personal experiences, and revelations. The heavens declare God's glory, and the angels have confirmed that from the very start, everything except the one who made them had a beginning. Perhaps that fact is what impresses us most, knowing that we were created by the same God who formed the angels, the heavens, and all that exists. The one who was never created, who has no beginning or end, decided to form us with his own hands. He did not need us, but he chose us, which gives us both purpose and dignity. We were thought of, desired, and brought forth by the eternal. Just like the angels, we are called to recognize our Creator and to offer our worship to him in spirit and in truth, never trying to take the place that belongs only to him. We were not made for our own glory, but to reflect the glory of the one who has existed since before time. In Revelation, we see a powerful scene. Thousands of angels around the throne, falling down and casting their crowns before God, while saying, "Worthy are you, Lord, to receive glory, honor, and power, for you created all things, and by your will they exist and were created." This declaration shows an undeniable truth. Everything exists because God intended it so. Nothing happens by chance, and nothing is accidental. Angels were not created out of necessity, but by a deliberate decision. The entire creation is a result of God's sovereign will. He created everything not out of loneliness or need, but for a clear purpose and for His glory, and that includes us. We were called into existence by the One who has always been. When we realize that God has no beginning, our understanding of time changes. We start to see that what we call a beginning is only the point where we were placed in a much larger narrative. For example, angels have been present since the creation of everything, but they are not eternal in the same way God is. They have a start, but no set expiration, unless they choose to rebel. However, God has neither a start point nor an end. He is the author of all things, and everything else is just part of the story. Therefore, trying to define God by the limits of creation is futile. He exists outside of any narrative. This is exactly what makes Him worthy of eternal worship. Some might wonder, if God is eternal, why did He choose a specific moment to create the universe? What was He doing before creating all things? This question comes from a way of thinking that everything must fit into a timeline, but God is not limited by time. Time exists within Him. For God, there is no before or after. Everything happens to Him as a continuous presence. It is within this timeless condition that the angels were created. They did not witness God's work, but they are aware of the creation of the universe because the Creator has no past or previous history. He is the only one whose existence is independent of anything else. This eternal, unseen, and incomprehensible God chose to make Himself known not only to the angels, but also to us, human beings. He showed Himself through His creation, by His word, and ultimately in Christ. The one who never had a beginning entered history to give us an everlasting destiny. This is more than just a doctrine. It is a display of grace, and even without experiencing redemption directly, the angels recognize this mystery with admiration. The salvation that God offers to man is something that even beings from the heavens cannot completely understand. They watch, they serve, they protect, and they announce, yet they know that only the Creator has the power to change the heart. It is to this God that they give their honor, the very same God who calls us today to know Him. The creation of the angels was only the start of what we now call spiritual reality. With them, God set up a hidden yet tangible order, a universe where battles, acts of worship, and decisions occur that affect the world we see. Every angel that was created has a specific role in God's eternal plan, and although many of them have never been seen by human eyes, their actions shape history, protect destinies, and carry out promises made by God. Even if we cannot see it, the invisible is extremely active. Angels move with respect and care before the one who created them, not out of clay, but with the true splendor that comes from God. As Isaiah 42:8 states, "I am the Lord, that is my name, my honor I give to no other," which means that even the most powerful and pure angels cannot claim the praise that is meant for the Creator alone. All of creation points to Him, and only He stands at the center. That is why any attempt to give honor to angels, saints, or any other creature is not supported by the Scriptures. The true spiritual servant knows his place and does not accept the honor that belongs only to God. The faithful angels live to reflect that light without trying to compete with it. Everything is meant to point to the eternal. When we ask ourselves who created God, we see that this question is not just a matter of philosophy. It is a discussion about the very nature of existence. It shows our desire to find an origin or an explanation in a way that makes sense to us, but God is beyond the limits of our logic. He is the foundation of everything that makes sense, and trying to measure eternity with a simple tool is impossible. The human mind was never made to understand something without a beginning. However, our inner spirit, which is created by God, recognizes the voice of its creator even without knowing every detail. It bows in worship because faith accepts what the eyes cannot see and what logic cannot fully explain. That is why at the end of every search, every question and every doubt, one truth remains. God simply is. He always has been and always will be. There is no moment when he does not exist, nor is there any place where he is absent. He is the source of all things, even though he himself has no beginning. This truth is what supports the existence of angels, the universe, and humanity itself. Everything depends on him to keep existing. Yet this exalted God chose to show himself to us. He calls, invites, and reaches out to us in a way that changes everything. He does not call to provide all the answers, but rather to give peace, faith, purpose, and salvation. The God who created everything, including the heavenly hosts, also made you, and he loves you with an everlasting love. As a final thought, remember this: the greatest wisdom is not in knowing everything about God, but in recognizing him as the only one worthy of all honor. If this message resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, like this video, and let us know in the comments which city you are watching from. See you in the next video.